Welcome to another How To Plus Q&A event. My name is Anamari Fanthorpe, and I'll be your host today. And today I have Stanley Henry here from The Attention Seeker, and we're going to be talking about how to start a podcast with Riverside. So we have discussed on many occasions, or a few occasions, what you need to get started to have a podcast, like kind of, the nitty gritty of, hey, Dean, of how we do that. But we haven't talked about platforms to use and delved into that aspect. So I thought this was a great way that we could look into a tool that actually is easy to use. I've had a look myself, but just a little tiny look. So I'm excited to hear what you've got to say, Stanley. So welcome to Digital Boost.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys, again. You're stuck with me for the next 45 minutes or so, and we're going to run through, as Anamari said, on this Riverside platform that we use in our business, which is one of many platforms that you can use for podcasting. So I guess we'll jump straight into it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. I'll share my screen to start with. All right. So for those of you listening who don't know who I am, I'm from a company called The Attention Seeker. So I'm the managing director and founder of this company. We create content at the end of the day. So we help people build their personal brands, and companies put out content on their social media platforms and websites and all that sort of stuff. We got a team of 13 strong here in Auckland, and a team of 9 in the Philippines. And I'm sorry if you can hear the team going off this morning. There's a lot going on in the office today, but that's us. So we are The Attention Seeker, and today we're talking about podcasts. And so podcast is a big part of our business, and something that we have invested heavily in and we do a lot of. And there's 2 ways to do that. You can do them in person and record traditionally, and the studio that we're in and we built this year has that facility for it. We built studios here, but sometimes it's hard to get the same 2 people in the same room. Sometimes in the last 2 years, you couldn't possibly do that because either you're in lockdown, they're in different countries, you can't travel, all these other reasons. And sometimes it's just creating content is time consuming. It takes up a lot of time to do and make lots of content. And so podcasts are one way of doing that faster, because you can do big bits of content that you can cut up and redistribute and do a lot of things with. And Riverside is a particular platform that allows you to do this virtually at a high quality. So we'll get into that. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Anchor at the end, which is a distribution platform, which goes in conjunction with Riverside. So let's get into learn a little bit about each of them. So Riverside, first of all, is an online recording platform that allows you to record video interviews in high quality. So it does this by recording a high quality video and audio file locally to each presenter's computer or device, and then uploading it to the cloud. Okay. So just to recap on that, what it does is that usually on Zoom or something like this, even you're streaming live, it's recording a streamed version of the conversation, which isn't always as high quality because it has to contend with the internet connection, right? So as fast as it can upload, that's the quality it can have. As internet connections increase, that quality increases, but still to get HD sort of quality, it needs to most people's internet connections, the best way to do that is to record it locally and then upload it as it can. Yeah. So this delivers you a professional, high quality video podcast with remote presenters from all around the world or in the office building next door. There are many options here other than Riverside, but this is what we will be working through today. And then secondly is Anchor. So Anchor is just, all it is a centralized distribution platform for podcasts. A lot of people may have seen it before. It's sort of the go-to platform for distributing podcasts. So you upload it once and you have your podcast posted on the below platform. So Spotify, who owns Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and Stitcher. So it gets a very wide distribution to all the major podcasting channels. And it also has editing and monetization tools to help with creating a podcast built into the program. All right. So with that in mind, I might share my new share, and so today's talk, what we're going to do is we're literally just going to walk you through these platforms and show you through how to do it. They're pretty basic, but you don't know what you don't know. Okay, so riverside.fm is the URL. When you get to it, you hit login. Pretty simple, normal things. Create an account, and then log in. There's a free account, a freemium sort of account that you can set up to start with. This is one of our trial accounts. So it's got a few podcasts in there with the guys that they've done remotely, and myself with the Nation podcast. So this is your dashboard. Okay, so there's a few things to sort of look at once you're set up. So once you are set up, you go through like a upgrade sort of purchase subscription. So if you have a look here, just for argument's sake, you can see that there's some different things that you can look at that yourselves. But the first thing you want to do when you're creating it is create a new studio, right? So the way that Riverside works, they use the word studio as the name for the podcast. So if you look at here, we've got Australia ASS podcast and we've got Nation podcast as two studios. Nation podcast is its whole own podcast show. And inside that, we've got all of these episodes, right? So these are all the studio recordings. And so I hope that makes sense. So the best way to sort of organize your Riverside account is to have one account for you and all the stuff that you do. You call a studio the channel, the show, the podcast episode, the podcast show name, whatever that looks like for you. For us, Nation Podcast, Australia SS Podcasts, which is success stories, just short for. And you can click into that, and then inside each one, you can have individual episodes for that podcast. So I hope that makes sense to start with. So we can create one. So we click on that, and we can go Digital Boost. Oh, spell it properly to start with. Digital Boost. You can then choose here the recording type. So is it audio and video or audio only? Okay, so this is important because podcasts are traditionally only audio, but in today's world, given the rise of the availability of video and people's ability to watch video streamed from their phone and all that sort of stuff, which, just 5 years ago, that wasn't as commonplace. And 10 years ago, I mean, you couldn't even, most phones couldn't even do that, let alone the internet connection being allowed to allow you to watch a video on your phone, right? So you've always been traditionally audio only, like a radio show. However, in today's world, because it's so easy to also record it with video, it's almost a no-brainer to just do it anyway. Whether or not you use it or not is regardless. Getting that video file just allows you to produce lots more content later on. So I always sort of suggest to people do audio and video. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone does it, but there's something that you can do now. So let's call that, and we can enter studio now. So it'll do its little thing. It'll load up. And so it's going to take me straight in here. So you're about to join Digital Boost. So I'll give myself a name. That's my presenter name. I am using headphones or I'm not using headphones. Now, the reason it asks you this is noise cancellation and echoes and stuff like that. So it has software in the background to help reduce some of that background noise and things. And it's probably going to short out here when I do this, but let's give it a crack anyway with my camera because I'm using it. Yeah, so I can't start cam. So try with mic only because I'm obviously using my cam. So it's letting me in there, right? So this is what it looks like. Anamari, tell me if my mic's gone on the chat. I've got it open because I'm trying to do yeah, cool, perfect. Trying to do two of these things at once. I wasn't sure if that would work. So yeah, camera's obviously not working, but on the left-hand side here, you would typically have my camera come on the side. On the right-hand side is for guests, right? And so you can invite guests along into this and they will show up. Now, we don't have to do that right now, but they would typically just show up on the side as a guest. They have less controls and stuff than you do as the presenter, but similar to this sort of thing when you invite people to a Zoom link, similar process, right? You can hit record down the bottom here. Pretty basic. I mean, honestly, most of the controls inside of Riverside are not too dissimilar to things that are like on Zoom and teams that everyone are used to now. They're just in different locations. But most of the time, and most of these platforms are usually in pretty intuitive places, right? And in this case, they're down the bottom here. So mic, you can choose a different mic you want. Camera, you can change cameras, speakers, what speakers you want to listen to. You can share your screen while you're on it. And you can obviously hit record. Now, we won't go into too much detail here because I'm going to show you one that we've already done so I can show you what it looks like when we're done. But I'll just show you, I'll navigate through all these pieces. So on the right-hand side here, and this bit here, it'll come up with all the people that are in the show, and you can have multiple people, so you can invite multiple people to the show. It doesn't just have to be two, so you can have multiple people in here. I've definitely done it with up to 4 people on a previous one, so I'm not 100% what the max is, but I'm pretty sure it's quite large anyway. So this here shows you the audio and video recording type. So this is actually quite interesting to look at, and not everyone will care about this stuff, but some people who are wanting to look, like if you're going to invest in Riverside, you're investing in quality because Zoom isn't giving you the quality that you want, right? So this is probably something that you're interested in. So it's telling you what you're recording in. It's telling you what your live quality is. So the other person will be able to see me at 720p, but I'm recording at 1080p, right? So you've got that bump up in video quality file. It's also telling you the frame rate, so 24 frames per second, which is pretty standard in our part of the world, and 44 kilohertz for your audio, which is, I mean, that's pretty much like CD quality for anyone who remembers CDs, right? So that's where we are there. You can change the name of the recording. So, you know, you can give this Digital Boost 1, something like that, if you wanted to. And in this bit here, this has got stuff about me as the host, right? So every participant that you have will have a little box like this. So you can turn echo cancellation on. This is what we were talking about before. If there's an echo, especially if you don't have headphones on, it tells you all the other things that this person is using. So if you imagine someone coming in from, you know, the US, it'll tell you, and you're not with them, it'll tell you what microphone they're using, what speakers they're using, what camera, which is really helpful. I don't know how many people have had Zoom calls or Teams calls, and you're trying to figure out whose audio is not working. Well, and you're not really sure, and the other person doesn't really know too much about technology, or their first time using Teams or whatever. You can sit here as the host and be able to go, oh, look, you're actually your microphone's connected to this, not the big black microphone that you got in front of you, change it, blah, blah, blah. So it helps with that process, right? So which is quite good, because if you're the host, you kind of want to be able to have that knowledge to know how to help. This other bit here, this slider, see, you can see my voice going along here. This helps. So if I don't know if I can do it. There we go. You see that red? I don't know if you guys can see that red, but that's clipping, right? That's starting to get too loud. So what you can do there is you can drag this, right? And so what this does is it lowers the volume of the other person on the call. So sometimes people's audio is too loud. You know, you always get that sometimes. So one person's mic is much better, or the other person just has a big boomier voice than the other person speaking. And when you listen to that back, it's not always the best listening experience, because you go from a real quiet speaker to a real loud speaker. So you can actually start to adjust those levels to make them a little bit more even. And when you're doing it on your own and you're the host, because I'll get into the next part about producers, but when you're doing it on your own, usually you need to use this visual cue here. And if you see someone keep clipping out at red, or if you see someone only staying in the green and never hitting yellow, you know, that gives you an indication of where to change that. It's really helpful. It makes a much quicker process in the back end for post-producing your podcast if you need to do anything. You can also mute people. So you can turn them off and on if you don't want them to speak or whatever. Okay. Lastly, in here, so it's just got a few more options, right? So record only audio, use noise reduction, sampling rate. You can turn it up to a higher sample rate for audio. You can put it up to 4K HD. So some people can do this, not everyone. So the camera I'm on can do 4K, however, isn't set to 4K at the moment. So you can flip that open and do it, but only if your camera can handle a 4K resolution. So that's something to be mindful of. But again, that's a great option, because you definitely can't do that in Zoom and things like that. So you can get to 4K recording, which is amazing because there's so much you can do with 4K. One, it's just higher quality, but two, you don't have to worry so much about framing, because in post-production you could crop in and everything and then save it as a 1080, and you can go down to literally a quarter of the size of what it was. So get into some geek tech speak at the moment, but that's that bit there. There's some general stuff in there too, like the name of it, studio type, if it's private or public, require guests to wait in a lobby. Sometimes that's good. So you might have guests coming in, at different times, and you want to let them in when you let them in. So that's a good way. Or you just might be prepping to start with, and they might jump on early. Do you want me to zoom in there? Yeah, I can zoom in there. Yeah, I'll zoom in anyway. And so that require guests to wait in the lobby is quite a good feature, actually, especially if you're trying to do some practice or testing settings and you don't want them in too early. Live stream. So this allows you to live stream to a bunch of platforms, right? So a lot of them need it set up. So there's a whole setup process that you'll need to go through, and we won't do that today because there's a whole lot to that, and you'd have to learn all about YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and LinkedIn, and custom services. But it's really easy. There's walkthroughs for it, so it helps you take you through the process. But you can tick all those and start live streaming straight directly to all your favorite platforms that you're in. So, which is great, I think, because that's kind of what we're doing today, right? It's a really helpful way of getting it live, doing it out there. It means you don't have to post-produce because you're just going to get natural and go off the cuff, but it helps a lot there. Audio and video, again, this is just some options that you have in there that you've already seen, so we won't go through that too much. Cool, so that's to start with. That's the main thing. On the side here, we have media. So there's like different stuff like cheering, drum jokes and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of different little things that you can add in there. I don't know if this will play for you guys, but they're just little, little snippets of stuff that you can add in to help produce your podcast a little bit better. When you hear those sort of well-produced ones, they'll have different things happen in the background, which is quite cool. You can add stuff to it as well. So you can add in your own media files if you've got them, which is really cool. So you can have all these like audio logos, little sound logos, there's those noises that brands have that when you hear it, that's that brand or that show and things like that, intro music, stuff like that. So that's a really cool thing that you can do there and have that at the beginning. If you're running an intro, you can hit it. So your music intro, exactly, Joe. It's one of your media snippets. So put that in, have that play before you start. You might have a sponsor. You might have a sponsor segment that you hit and it runs a sponsor segment through it, or an ad or something like that. Those things, people do if they are monetizing their podcasts. All that sort of stuff can jump in there. And then in the chat, this is so you can chat to like the other people in the show. So obviously it's not going to get recorded, so that way you can talk about it, talk to each other. Obviously down the bottom here, it says at Riverside to contact support. So if you're having any issues as you're live recording and you don't want to stop, you can at Riverside contact support, start having a chat with them to try to resolve something that's not working as you're going, which I think is a pretty cool feature for them. So that's it. The last thing that I want to show on this page is up the top here. So your recording status will appear here, right? So this little thing is, it's that sort of universal symbol for record. That'll turn red when you're recording. Okay, and that's really good to know. It's a good indicator light to know that you are live and recording, because sometimes you don't want to get 20 minutes into the session and realize the record didn't properly start. And this one on the side here is your upload status. So this is probably the most important thing to talk about and to make sure if you're going to use Riverside. As we mentioned, Riverside records locally and then uploads to the cloud at the end, or it uploads later on to the cloud, not live streaming. This indicator here tells you where it's up to. So it'll give you a little percentage sign next to the cloud that will say 95% uploaded or 87% uploaded. It's uploading as you're going, but obviously there's only so much bandwidth for it to not only stream, but also to upload, because it's trying to do both now, right? So it's not always going to be 100% unless you got really fast internet. And most people's home internet these days, if you've got fiber, you're pretty much going to be running at about 97, 96% the whole time, because how much fiber can push through. But if you're still on ADSL, or you can do this off your phone and you're running on 4G, it's not going to quite be there, right? So you might need to finish the podcast. So you'll stop recording, you'll end it, and then you'll need to let that finish uploading. All right. So that's really important, this step. And I want to reiterate, I'm going to stay on this bit for a little bit because it's where people may sometimes forget. So your guests, what will happen is you'll end the podcast and they may jump straight off and then they won't be fully uploaded. And then you'll think, crap, I've missed this thing. I've wasted this whole podcast. But the best thing about Riverside is that all you have to do to them is you say to them, hey, go back into your browser's history and open back up Riverside. And Riverside's smart enough that it'll know what it needs to do. It'll realize that there's a save file still on your computer and it'll continue to upload it straight away. And then it'll give them that note, right? So it's quite clever. Obviously, the best thing to do is at the start of the podcast or the brief that you give to people before they join is to say, look, once the podcast finishes, we'll hang up the call and we'll just wait for a little bit until this here goes green and says we're uploaded. Because you're not going to get the end of your podcast if you don't do that. Okay, so it's really important. But again, the safety net's built in. Riverside's pretty clever. They understand this stuff's going to happen. So they've built in a feature where your browser, once you go back onto your browser, it understands what it needs to do and it starts to upload it. And they can actually do that like a day or two later. We've had a guest that we did it with. They closed off and then they're actually about to go and leave for the night. For the week, and so they closed the computer, turned everything off, and they're like, "I'm done. I'm on annual leave now." And then I had to we messaged them and emailed them a couple of times to say, "Hey, just did this." And anyway, they didn't look at anything till the next day in the afternoon. Jump back on, it uploaded, and we had the whole podcast. So it can be saved, but it's just something to be mindful of. Okay, so that's the main studio screen. Okay, so unless anyone's got any questions, we can always come back to this later. But there's all the basic sort of stuff down here to go through. What I would like to show you though, so this is recording. This is the production side of it. But as we know, or anyone who's tried to make a podcast in the past, the actual hardest part about podcasts is post-production. It's actually editing it all and getting it all ready to put it onto a platform like Anchor. Right. So Anamari, it's not easy part. This is the easy part. It's doing the actual recording. It's all the post-production. It's why a lot of people stop making podcasts. So if we just leave this, we'll end meeting for all, go back to the dashboard. And let's go into this Nation podcast. And if we've got a few in here. So, let's jump into this one. So they're all archived at the moment, but I've just restored this one of Kalolo. This is what you'll get. So inside your podcast studio, you're going to get the full recording, and down here's a clip. This is a full clip, so it's just literally the whole entire clip. But here's also some snapshots. So these are thumbnails essentially. So they've just auto-generated some thumbnails for you. They're not always the best, but there's something there that you can look at. And these are each of the people's individual recordings, right? So you can see here on this particular day, I was recording out of an office building, and the internet, the computer I was using wasn't the greatest image quality. So you can see that my image quality wasn't great on this particular camera, and Kalola's one, he only had a 720p webcam. Right, so that was the best he could do, but it was still 720. Now there's another whole tech geek rant about webcams and when you're doing live streams and qualities and stuff that you'll need to check out. But a 720p webcam, when it does live streaming, is always going to be a lot worse than if it records locally, just because of the way the cameras work. So that's just something to think about. Even though it's only 720, it's still better than a live stream 720. And then there's a few different files that you can download, right? So you can just download each of the individual files if you want them. Okay, so that's for each of Kalolo's and my individual files that you want. But that's sometimes good if you're wanting to take that file and do some post-production, all that sort of stuff. But we're in the business of making things easy. So something we can do is just edit and export, right? So if you hit edit and export, let's look at this already. I'll zoom in a little bit here. It's already, what type of content would you like to make? I might want to make a story from an Instagram reel, right? Because I want to promote this podcast. So I can click on that. It's already going to crop it to the right right size. It's going to do all this fancy whiz bang stuff and make us look great. I can then go, you know what, I only want this to be this little clip here. I know it is because I've listened to it. I've taken timestamps. I know where I want to cut it. I give it, I can make this a real one, something like that, give it a name. You can change layouts and stuff like that. So you can do like this sort of thing. So this one here is with gaps, so it has that little fancy border around it with no gaps, just the person talking. So it'll use AI to switch. So if we just watch this, you know what, it might just be him talking, but it tries to use AI to switch. I don't think it's playing, so I won't do that.
Yeah,
properly.
we can hear the sound, but
you can.
Can't do your sound and their sound, but
yeah.
I've got a question for you. So if
cool.
People going on Riverside and you want to edit out some or ahs or like spaces in between, how do you do that? Is there actually like just a toggle that kind of senses that, an AI system, or do you have to do that manually?
Yeah, real good question. So in this particular software, it doesn't have the auto ums and ahs and pause cutouts. If you want to do that, my suggestion is to take the file. There are other services, online AI services that do that and upload it. It'll cut it all and export a second time. Unfortunately, it would be great if Riverside had that. I mean, we can have a look around. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. And I don't want to, look like an idiot if it actually does, but I'm pretty sure I've never seen it. You never know, because they always they always do change stuff, but no, I don't believe they have the pause things, but there are other softwares out there. If you just Google something like audio pause remover or ums and ah remover, there are some AIs that do it. My advice with that,
Descript, you might be able to use Descript for it. Descript and turns it into written text, and then you just delete text that you don't want. But I don't know if you can record. The reason why I like this is because you can record through it, where Descript, if you're in two different locations, I don't think that you can actually record it that way. That's their each platform
exactly. That's the thing, because these platforms, they're like, if we want to get into the economics of it, all these platforms try to do a niche. They just want to be acquired by someone bigger who will steal their technology, and that's sort of Descript's thing. They all have a specialty niche, and then eventually a bigger player will buy them all up and put them all into one. And so at the moment, Riverside, the best thing I like with Riverside is this ability to like quickly cut and edit stuff, changing the background looks of it.
So user-friendly. Like, it's just
so easy.
Simple. You go into Adobe, some of the other platforms, and you just go, like there's so many tools. You can get a bit overwhelmed. Yeah,
I agree. And but this thing here, I think, is awesome. Like, it's just that you don't even have to think about, because the hardest thing when you're clipping clips in like you say in Premiere or whatever you use is that when you're trying to make it a story for reels and things like that, you have to completely rejig it and try frame it up right and all this sort of stuff. And obviously, as you saw, it just uses AI to frame it up. It just makes sure the head's in the right spot, because some people, they're sitting off to the side here for whatever reason. It happens all the time. And then when you're in Premiere and you're trying to do it all, they might move a lot, and you're having to always keyframe and move the frame for them. Whereas in this, it just does it all for you, right? Like we sat pretty clear in the middle here with ours, but it does a really good job of keeping you in there. You can also do stuff like rounded corners, things like that. It's just all these editing stuff.
Just makes it look really clean. Yeah,
makes it look real professional, real fast. This is the thing I think is the biggest takeaway for Riverside. So the recording high quality and all that stuff's great. Like, you should just do it, but there's many tools that do it. One of the things I like about Riverside is that is this ability to clip out lots of stuff really fast, because making one long form podcast for say 30, 45 minutes is great. But if you post that once, you just spent 45 minutes and you got one piece of content, and it's a long form piece of content. So you're going to have a real limited number of people watching it. We all know that you do long form pieces of content. So you can clip them down into smaller ones, right? And this allows you to do it straight away. Because a good tip in what we do is that we will always have a producer on the show when we're doing it. Not everyone can afford or can do that, but the producer's job, which sometimes if it's just you are the producer and the host, is you have a piece of paper. You literally just have a piece of paper. There's a timer going on the thing, and you just write down the time that someone said something. There was a really good conversation that happened. That lets you go back to that point and go, okay, where's that conversation? Cool. Okay, it starts here and it finishes there, clipped. And so you might have 10 or 15 really great one-liners over a 30, 40-minute conversation. You've taken a timestamp note of each of them. And honestly, within like 20 minutes, you've clipped out 10, 15 clips. So now you've got 10 to 15 one-minute clips. You can make them in story version. You can make them in post version. So you've got stuff to go out on post on LinkedIn and stuff, but you've also got stories and reels to go out on Instagram, all linking back to the main full story as podcast, right? So I think that's like one of the key takeaways for everyone today is to realize how much content you'll be able to create with platforms like this with no editing skills, very little time, and in a really professional and slick looking output. Cool. So like honestly, in a nutshell, that is mostly it for this. There's obviously downloads and you can get transcripts and all that sort of stuff, right? All the basic things that Google will be able to tell you better than I can. But it's good to sometimes just go through with people and realize like what all the abilities that you have. And here you can obviously export, which is what you need to do to get the video file. You can duplicate it, make more of them, change them around, rename, delete, all that sort of stuff. So that's pretty much it from this perspective in terms of Riverside. So it was about half an hour or so of going through that. There's plenty of more things I probably didn't get into, but I think for people starting out creating a podcast, or they maybe have tried doing a podcast and it just became a lot of work to try do it, this is a great way to try speed up that process. Yeah, try have it so that you can make it a lot easier, better quality, and then make a lot of great quality, smaller snippets that you can distribute to promote the podcast. And then once you've done all that and you've downloaded this big audio file, this big video file, you now need to distribute it. And not everyone has time, definitely don't have time to go around all the platforms, upload it, do all the stuff. This is where Anchor comes in. So I won't spend too long on this because this is a whole nother thing, but I do want to show it because if someone goes and makes a podcast, then they're like, well, now what do I do with it? And so Anchor and YouTube are probably your two best options. So we won't get into YouTube because YouTube's a whole nother thing. But in terms of Anchor as a podcast for audio only, this is a great platform to use. So in ours, we've got it all sort of set up here for our podcasts and stuff like that. But what we'll do is take you through a new episode. So once you're signed up, you'll get to the dashboard, you hit a new episode, and you can do the two different ones. So you can create an episode. So here you can, drag in your files. You can record right there from your browser if you wanted to, and so it's got recording tools in it as well for like pure podcasting stuff. It's got library in there of like we talked about before, if you want to add in intros and stuff like that, you can assemble it in here. But we've outsmarted this system and we've just done it all in Riverside. You can add music, which is cool because Anchor's owned by Spotify. They have like a thing where you can start to add Spotify tracks. I haven't got mine linked here right now, but that's quite cool because getting real commercial songs on your podcasts is very expensive if you were to do that yourself to get licensing. So Spotify helps to do that now with their own creator fund that they have for artists to be paid for this sort of stuff as a view. Voice message links, transitions. So again, those are some little sound pieces there. But if we go to library and we just chuck one of these in, so I've just dragged this audio in, so you can see you can just start dragging stuff in there and assemble a whole podcast, whatever you want to do. We can go save episode once we've done that, once we've got everything. And then in here, it's just options, right? It's like posting. What's the episode title? So we just call that Digital Boost. Give it a description. So Riverside. We can publish it now. Subscription only, that's probably another whole topic. But what that means is that there is a facility inside Anchor to create a subscription model for your podcast. So people have to pay money to hear it. My suggestion with this is like, only do this once you've got, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of listeners, because what you're really trying to do with a podcast is create content and build an audience, and monetizing your audience when you've got 3 listeners is probably not the best way to do it. But each to their own. Publish date, so you can pick a date you want to publish it, so you can schedule them, which is cool, because you might record 4 or 5 podcasts in a day. You might back them up. Polls, so you can add polls. That's the thing on Spotify people can do, and Q&A. So those are quite cool. So if you want to do that, have a look into them. But everyone knows sort of what a poll and a Q&A is. Now, this is the last bit I think actually quite important. So season number. So seasons. Some of the best advice I got with podcasts is to create seasons. So you might have a podcast that has episodes 1 to 8, season 1. Do that, and the reason being is that usually try group seasons around topics or things, so that if someone really likes a topic, they're like, oh, there's a whole season on that topic, I can go listen to all of those ones. It gives them something to go back to and find other episodes and things like that, sort of groups them in. Otherwise, often when you put up a podcast, you put it up once and no one ever goes and looks at any others. They just listen to that one. They never go back to old ones. They only go to new ones. This sort of says to people, oh, this is part of this season. You might be interested in the other episodes from that season. Again, you can change if you want it to be a trailer or a bonus. So that's just, trailers, bonuses, like little small clips. So trailers, obviously something you put out before the full episode, and a bonus is something you put out after the main episode. And then obviously the full episode. And then you can say if it's clean or explicit. If you listen to ours probably all explicit. We probably swear a bit too much. But upload new episode art. So again, create your little art that you might need and upload that, and then that'll show on Spotify. And then you hit publish now. So it's pretty simple. And before I wrap up, what I'll do is I will show you what that looks like on Spotify. So, I closed my Spotify before I started this, which is probably silly. But let me just reshare that, because I think this is actually quite cool. So those of you who haven't seen this before, this is what happens, on Spotify, we've got our own playlist. We've got 2 podcasts that we produce. So we've got one for us internally. So we have Everything's Grey, and we have Success Stories. So Success Stories are my team, Sean and Treya, and they have different guests on talking about their stories of success, essentially, as the name suggests. And mine, Everything's Grey, with Drew Knowles from Influential You. And we talk about stuff that is grey in nature, no black and white answers, real open-ended topics. So it's pretty cool. It all does there. You can watch it Spotify, so you can get it on all your platforms. And because Spotify has a free version, it's quite cool because you can send the link to anyone and everyone can listen to it. Spotify will just play ads to people who don't have it, who don't have a subscription. So yeah, a really cool thing to be able to get your podcast up. So with that, I think that was in a nutshell. We got it all.
I love that you covered Anchor as well, because I think it's really important. You can push out to lots of channels at the same time and just save yourself some time on that uploading. Time, money,
Yeah, so. Absolutely. As I was putting this together and thinking about this, I was like, I know the questions will be, okay, what do we do with it? Like, you've got it, what do we do, and how do we get it out? And so Anchor's just, it's just the best tool. Like, I can't explain how easy it makes distributing your content and scheduling software. And it's free, like $0. You never have to pay anything. Spotify obviously wants people to put up more podcasts because they see that as a future of one of the future ways of growing their platform. So it's just a great platform to use. Really, really cool.
Yeah, I've got to check out some of your Everything is Grey podcasts, because I've checked out some of the other ones. So I haven't checked in a while. I've got to say, I'm not. I do listen to podcasts here and there, but I'm kind of one of those people who forgets that I must have a very busy mind. I talk to myself a lot. So yeah.
I'm the same. Like, I listen to audiobooks more than I listen to podcasts. And so even with our own podcasts, we make them, so sometimes you don't really go back and listen to them a whole lot. But the thing I love about podcasts is that they're really good for driving, like especially if you're commuting, they're really good to put on a commuting, or going on road trips sometimes. Yep, music's great, but sometimes, you know, you just it just gets a bit monotonous, and sometimes you just want to tune out and drive on a road trip and listen to something. And there are some amazing podcasts out there, like some people doing some really cool stuff. So yeah. Oh, yeah. If you work outside, absolutely, Joe. Yeah, the podcasts are great. Things like that. They're kind of like talkback radio, essentially. So if you're ever into talkback radio or morning drive radio, they're like that, which is people having conversations, and humans love that.
I do find it really interesting, you know, when you just find your tribe on the podcast and you just really gel with whoever the presenter is and whoever they have on, and they've got possibly, for me, it's about humor. So, you know, like they've got the same sense of humor, so you can have some giggles here and there. And sometimes you'll be in the shop and just laugh out loud if you're, you know, if you're listening to something that's a classic movie.
Yeah, I do that often. Yep.
Yeah, and I think what was a really good take home from this session, and for us to remind ourselves, is that just because it's an audio content, or traditionally we think of podcasts as audio content only, maximizing the usage of the content is essential. If you do record it as a video as well, you've just got all of these touch points you can then put on your socials. And I know that one of the things is often like the hardest for small businesses, and I reckon all businesses, is content creation. You know, I don't care how big or small you are, the amount of content we have to push out these days is, you know, is quite a lot in a way, you know, depending on how
it is.
And so having quality content that you've created in one session that you can push out to a number of platforms is just brilliant. So do take advantage of that, and what a great feature to be able to resize it for your various platforms. And you pick clips based on your audience on those platforms. You know, some of your audience on Facebook might have different kind of vibes than on, you know, other platforms that you're on. So what do we have? Anchor has the recording capability. Is the advantage of using Riverside as well just the editing tools?
Look, Joe, good question. And my thought process is that Riverside is about quality. So if you're only doing audio only, just go straight into Riverside, because that audio uploads so fast, there's such small files. But if you want video and you want that locally recorded video, that's where Riverside's biggest advantage is, and the editing tools obviously is also a big advantage. So if audio only, just go straight into Anchor. That's fine for a podcast if you wanted to do it that way. And actually, even if you record them in person, you can do it straight to Anchor. Like you can have microphones set up straight to Anchor on your computer, in person doing it, audio only. So that's another way. But Riverside, the video, like the platforms that do that locally recorded video, you can't beat them. It just makes for such a better quality picture. Yeah.
And I will say that, you know, when it comes to content, as far as social media platforms and all of that, you know, video is king. So having those little bits of video teasers to draw people to your podcast is a great way to engage with your audience. People just photos, you know, often we'll have a quick look, but we'll swipe. Another technique, we use it here at Digital Boost, just if you wanted an option where you didn't have to do video, because I know some people really hate video. You know, you can just create a social media post and embed the audio into the post. So you'll do your clip the same that you would in Riverside. You'll just only use the audio version and attach that to the image. And that can be a way that you can get around that video, but still have the audio there on a post. We definitely do that on Digital Boost sometimes. We've been using but for our podcast,
what was that one? Sorry?
We've been using Restream, but
cool.
It's because but I would say if you're going to use, we don't edit in Restream. So it's not the same as this situation. We then pull it out of Restream, and then it goes to like a whole different software where the guy who's really good, Benji, at editing, he can do all of the crazy stuff. And so, you know, it's quite complicated. And so I wouldn't recommend that but you know, maybe I don't know how techie you are out there.
It's really only for people who have lots of, like, they're going all in on this podcast. They got a lot of time to do that all on your own. I mean, it's different for, you know, Anamari and ourselves. We've got teams who can delegate some of the work to, and it makes it a bit easier. But that's why I love Riverside, because actually you can do that on your own. You can speak to someone for 30 minutes and do all the post editing in 30 minutes. And within an hour, you've got 2 weeks of content. You've got 10 clips. That's one a day plus a podcast. You can have a podcast every 2 weeks and it takes you an hour, maybe an hour and a half of scheduling.
Yeah, I love, and that's a really good point. Like the editing, account for your editing and your time budget, because it is important to get those extra bits off the back end. So whatever that is for you, for your posts and stuff like that. So I just want to say thank you so much, Stanley, for taking the time out of your day.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm looking forward to our future. We've got some cool sessions coming up with Stanley where he's going to educate us on videoing and stuff like that. So that'll be cool. And I've just been popping through because there are people on social. But it looks like we're pretty good as far as questions on those platforms.
Cool. Awesome.
Tuning in, guys, on those channels. And we'll see you if you're joining us tomorrow for the workshop. We're doing a workshop on e-learning platforms. So you'll actually come out with a spreadsheet with all information to get started on creating an e-learning platform.
Amazing.
RSVP, because it's the
Cool.
only way you get in. Yeah.
That's awesome. What a great session.
Stanley, if you could stay on for a sec after.
Perfect.
Kia ora, everyone. Have a great day. And we'll see you
Thanks, guys.